Great to be with you. You guys are listening to Jay Fuller Interviews. Yes, Jay Fuller Interviews on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You certainly can subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's a little greater than sign at the bottom of the screen. Love to have you subscribe so you don't miss this interview, others that are coming up, and those that we've had in the past. Some great guests. And joining us now, the athletic director from Mount Mansfield Union, it's David Marlow. David, good to see you.
Yeah, same to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to get right into it with Jeff Davis. He coached at Mount Mansfield for 21 years. Your position now is looking to replace him with COVID-19. How does that fall on your priority list to replace Jeff? Did he drop all the way down with some of the other stuff going on now?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was going to be a monumental task to replace Jeff Davis as it is. I'm currently entering my 9th year here, and I would dare say he is one of, if not our best coach at MMU. So it was going to be a task to begin with, and because of the COVID and this situation, it has kind of taken a back burner a little bit. We have done a first round of interviews, and I'm kind of waiting for the state to lift some more restrictions so we can get the candidates in to do an in-person practice type situation with some athletes to see how they interact with kids before we go on and move on to a finalist.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time in which we live. I want to back up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in St. Albans, born and raised.
Were you a sports fan, athlete? What was your interest when you were younger?
Well, so the backstory goes, my dad's actually been the athletic director up at BFA St. Albans for 35 years.
Wow.
So I've kind of grown up in the family, I guess you can say, and know the system and know the ropes. I'm an avid sports fan. My wife would say this COVID period has actually been more detrimental to her than she realized just because of the lack of sports or live sports on TV. She would wake up in the morning and ask why I'm watching the Korean Baseball League or even cornhole at times. I was a 3-sport athlete at BFA St. Albans. I played soccer, basketball, and baseball. Actually played against Coach Davis when I was in high school. And then I went on to St. Mike's and played 2 years of soccer at St. Mike's before I started focusing on getting that degree rather than just playing athletics.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, yeah, on ESPN early on, they had stone skipping, and it took place in Mackinac Island, Michigan, where my wife is from. And so we watched that for a little bit. But it was funny what drew you in. You said you played against Jeff Davis in high school. Which sport? Because he went to Craftsbury, which is a pretty small school.
He was coaching.
Oh, okay.
He was coaching at MMU, and we would play against MMU when I was in high school. So I played against Coach Davis then.
And now when you took over at Mount Mansfield, you had big shoes to fill. And what is it about being an athletic director that kind of drew you in? Because I know ours at Harwood, Chris Langevin, who does an excellent job. I mean, there's countless and thankless hours that you put in that nobody ever sees. Mm-hmm. Was that a draw to you, or what is it about just being an AD that you felt that was your calling?
Yeah. I think the relationships that you're able to build with your athletes and the people that you kind of encounter on a daily basis is worth more than any sort of money you could buy. I know during my interview process at MMU, one of the admin made a comment that, how would you like to be the face at MMU? Because you will be the face. Everyone will know who you are. And with that comes a lot of responsibility, but it comes a lot of a sense of pride when you walk into a gym in the wintertime and see 300 students pack the gym and 1,000 people, cheering and supporting. Or if you go to a dance competition at the state championship and you see half the bleachers are filled with MMU parents and students supporting a dance team. I think that speaks volumes of the sense of community. And I think MMU was a perfect fit in the sense that I grew up in St. Albans, and I always viewed Mount Mansfield growing up as kind of the Chittenden County version of BFA. A lot of blue collar, hardworking, may not be the best athletes in that specific sport, but they're multi-sport athletes who will never stop working. And that kind of drew me into this position.
And I think that's a good representation of Vermonters and those within the state. I just wanted to bring up this graphic if I can. Yeah, this is just the website. Here you go. And the question has to do with the seniors, especially. I know for the boys basketball team, they were able to complete their season. The
Yes.
girls, unfortunately, were not, and we could talk about that later as you were named the quad champions. Harwood was named the co-champions. But especially for the seniors of the spring sports, not being able to participate, close out their year, can you just talk to those seniors of the spring sports that really missed out?
Yeah, they all know how I feel. I actually took some time and wrote each of them a hand note and mailed it to them once they officially canceled the season with the VPA. My heart went out for them. I mean, you're showing pictures up on our website. We have a bunch of pictures from our graduation, which I thought was better than any of us could have ever imagined. In the sense of family, in the sense of community was at its highlight that day. And it was nice to be able to do it in Jericho on our facilities, which they haven't been part of for months now.
Yeah.
But it takes away. It's a lot of our students identify themselves as athletes. I identify myself as an athlete in high school, and I can't imagine going a season without playing a sport because it was canceled. And that makes it difficult. It was difficult driving into the driveway of the high school every day and not seeing our athletic facilities being utilized the way they usually are in the spring. We have a very good and high population of athletes and competitive athletes at that. And so on any given day before school, after school, those facilities are being utilized in a variety of ways. And it just, that sense of community I felt, although it came on and finished strong, I really missed that sense of community within our students and seeing them compete and kind of living the highs and lows with them during competition.
Yeah, I just want to turn the attention to basketball. And I know for you, you have to wear many hats and look at all of the sports. But just with the girls' basketball season, finishing quad champions, I know for our girls, Harwood, we wanted to play Fairhaven. We actually had the opportunity to play and win the semifinal game. And the co-champions was bittersweet. It was nice, but it was certainly, we wish we could have just won outright. With the quad champions not even being able to play that semifinal game, Sophia Farrell, her family's friends of ours.
Yep.
How difficult was that for you to communicate with the coaches and the team that you guys were doing the best you could, but your hands were kind of tied as well?
Yeah, we had a sense something was going to come down the pipeline earlier in the week. Our girls hockey team co-ops with CVU as part of the Red Hawks that we've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years. And they were in the Division II girls championship game 2 days prior. And we had a sense then that, it was going to be something different happening Thursday night when we were going to Patrick. The tough thing to swallow wasn't the fact that we would have won or lost it. At that point, it didn't really matter. It was the first time our girls basketball program had ever made it to a state semifinal. It was the first time they'd ever won a quarterfinal game. And it was the first time in nearly 15 years they had actually hosted a quarterfinal game. And to see the energy in the gym, not knowing, being over vacation week, what kind of crowd are we going to get? Sure. And the gym was packed and it was full and the atmosphere was electric. And it was awesome to see our girls program be able to have that kind of success in front of a full house. And highlight the strides that they have made over the last 4 or 5 years as an overall program. Being named quad champs, it was kind of a joke actually at first. Like I jokingly had said to Bob Johnson, hey, why don't you just name us quad champs and we'll be done. And he kind of chuckled at it and said, well, I don't know if we can do that. And then it kind of happened. And I was like, oh, wow. And he goes, I know, weirder things have happened. But, it doesn't take away from the season that the girls had and our coaching staff had. They put a lot of time and effort into building that program, into being respectful. First time they were co-champs in the Lake Division. They win 16 games in a season for the first time in a long time. My first 2 years there, I think we won 2 games combined in 2 years. So they've made giant strides in competing. And they'll have a banner hanging up in the gym,
right,
declaring champions. They have the championship medals. We'll have the VPA championship trophy, and we're treating it as if they were champions, because in my book they are champions. Whether they win or lose that last game. But it did leave a sense of bittersweet taste in our mouth, because we were hoping to play Essex in that semifinal, and then having an opportunity to either play Rutland or CVU for the first time would have been fun.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting just to be a part of high school sports. And I joked a little bit with Jeff Davis about going to Craftsbury, and there's nothing else to do in Craftsbury except go to the high school games. But I believe the beauty of Vermont is the town really rallies and supports the local student athletes. So whether it's Craftsbury Division 4 or Mount Mansfield, you guys are kind of the big guns. Can you just speak to why the community supports you guys and how special it is to have the gym packed, or fans all over the soccer field, football field, just supporting these kids?
Yeah, I think it shows the sense of passion that this community has. I always love driving. I moved my family into the community less than 2 years ago for this reason. We love this community. We want to be part of the school district. We want to do this. And you drive around town and you have signs up in front of stores congratulating teams after a big win, or wishing them luck before a semifinal game or a championship game. There's no denying that if MMU is in a semifinal at Patrick Gym, we sell out of our allotment of tickets. Or if we're in a championship game in baseball last spring at Centennial Field, our side of the bleachers were completely full. Sure. They come out and they support the community and they support the kids. And I think that's a true testament to the type of people that surround themselves within this community. And they want to be part of something. And I think that's a true testament to our coaching staffs in every sport, as well as our athletes, because if they're doing things the right way, then people want to be part of that success. And if they're not doing things the right way and still winning, then, people are going to have something to say about that. And community service, I think, is a big push. And we kind of push that with all of our teams every season, just try to get out in the community and show them and give back to the community, because they've given a lot of time to them as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like Hoosiers everywhere you go, that people follow to cheer their kids on. And even if you do not have a child or a grandchild, it's still kind of it takes a village, right? Everybody takes
absolutely
under their wing.
We always joke around as well. We travel, our students travel really, really well.
Yeah.
It drives my wife crazy, because I tend to go to every away game, at least in Chittenden County area, because I would rather be there and have to deal with any issues that may arise rather than have someone else deal with it. Right. And they just travel, and we go to visiting gyms, and they're like, "Wow, I can't believe you guys have this many kids come." It's not that far. People think Jericho is a long ways out. I mean,
right?
You're 10 minutes from Essex and 25, 30 minutes from Burlington. So, the kids want to be part of it, and they make a spectacle of it. Al's French Fries is huge during that playoff run for us if we're in Chittenden County.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, when I coached in Colorado, it was nothing to take a 3 or 4 hour bus trip to get to a game. It was pretty nuts. Let's diversify the conversation a little bit. No live sports, but ESPN has put out some documentaries. The Last Dance definitely was my favorite, but just seeing whether it's Bruce Lee or Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa and even Lance Armstrong, what have you been able to watch besides Korean baseball or stone skipping that you've really enjoyed during this time?
Yeah, The Last Dance, I think it was excellent. I actually was kind of late to the game in that, just because I think it started at like 9:00. Yeah. And with a 3-year-old and 6-year-old and 2 dogs, it becomes 9:00 is usually my time to relax before I hit the sack and go to bed. But I got into it. And once I got into it, I couldn't stop watching, and it's the competitiveness and the greatness that's involved in that, I think is really fascinating. Besides that, I've actually caught up on a bunch of shows that I would never have time to do, because I'd always be at school or at a game. and I've watched a lot of kids shows and kids movies, and my kids and I have caught up. Prior to becoming an AD, I was a kindergarten teacher for 5 years.
Okay.
So with this whole remote learning, we had a foster daughter as well during the time. And so I was kind of the classroom teacher during the day and kind of working the AD role when I had time at night. So a lot of times it would be just something on in the background as noise so I could get some work done.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely an interesting time, but we do get to spend some extra time with our family. Being a dad, happy Father's Day, a little bit late, but it's different having young kids, and it's weird because my son just graduated high school, 2-3 weeks ago. My daughter is going into her junior year, and it seems as though I do have more free time to watch things later in the evening. I'm not exhausted from chasing them all day. How has being a dad changed you and your perspective, whether it's your job or whether it's just a living life, certainly during this COVID-19 time?
I'd say the biggest thing I've always been told that it's nothing better than having, than being a dad and seeing that. And I can't disagree. I mean, I can't agree with that more. I mean, there's literally nothing better. My oldest, who just turned 6 last week, is all about Cougar Nation. So, if the coaching staff are getting t-shirts, I have to order a smaller size for him to wear. If the teams are ordering sweatshirts, I'll order him a small size as well and pay for it. So that way he can have a sweatshirt as well. His question usually every morning is, "Hey Dad, how'd the Cougs do last night?" He gets dropped off the bus every day at school with me. So I call him my little assistant.
Yeah.
And, he knows these kids by name, they're role models for him. And I think that's the cool thing. You talk about a sense of community, and it takes a community or it takes a village. My boys are totally ingrained in MMU, and MMU has completely wrapped them around themselves. No surprise to see them at games in the student section in the front row with the seniors or the juniors cheering on the team, or on the sideline being a ball boy during the fall, or fetching foul balls in the spring. Like it doesn't matter. They want to be there and they want to be a part of it. Jameson's theme this year was MMU Cougars for his birthday, so I mean, it's just the excitement of being able to share that with them has been awesome. And it kind of, I lived it myself. I was a BFA ball boy from the age of 1. And so being able to share that with my kids is awesome. And it's something that, it's nice.
That definitely leads into my next question. With your dad being an AD and what you learned from him, what did you learn from watching your father?
Pretty much everything. I mean, I couldn't have asked for and still can't ask for a better role model and mentor. I'm really lucky. If we have to vent, my wife doesn't have to hear me vent. I can call my dad and talk to my dad, and he can do the same. I grew up knowing a bunch of the area ADs because of that. And so I was able to build relationships with people, after receiving this job and start networking through them as well. I think the organization and the biggest thing is being present. People don't really care what you say. They want to see you there, and I've been able to solve a lot of problems by just being present, and people know I will be there, whether it's practices or games, and it doesn't matter if it's a theater production or a band concert or, a boys basketball game. Like, I try to attend every or as many events as I can.
Well, that's what I've heard, the gift of presence. And so sometimes people just want to see you in the stands cheering them on instead of getting any sort of gift. How would your dad say that sports have changed over the years?
I think social media plays a big role. I feel like that's kind of an easy answer, but I graduated from BFA in 2002, and what I tell the high school kids now is we didn't have cell phones in 2002. Yeah. And it wasn't until we got to college and we got those nice, fancy, what we thought were fancy flip phones, and they couldn't take pictures. All they could do was send text messages. Right. I used to pick on my dad because he had the old school Zach Morris phone that was like bright yellow with the antenna you had to roll out, and so that was his first phone. So I think having everything right, like instantaneously, has really changed what happens on a daily basis. you could make a mistake in a game, and that's all plastered all over social media, and now people are commenting about it. And we talk about the mental health and the well-being of our athletes, and I think that plays a big role. The anxiety piece plays a big role into that. At the same time, I think there's a lot more opportunities nowadays than there were even when I was in high school. I know since I've been here in 8 years, we've added volleyball, ultimate frisbee. We tried to add rugby for a while. It's just we don't have the numbers to be able to successfully do that. There's just multiple opportunities for kids now to have something to do in each and every season.
So what is your favorite season?
It's a tough and a loaded question. To be politically correct, I love them all. And I really do. I'm not just saying that. As I stated earlier, I am a super avid sports fan. And so I will watch anything that has to do with sports. It doesn't matter. And I just enjoy watching it. I love the winter season because of the sense of community at night. And there's something about, playing in front of a packed gym and the excitement and the energy that happens to that. But I love the fall because it's a fresh new beginning of a school year, and the weather's great, and the kids come out for that on a Saturday afternoon at 1:00 for a football game. We get a crowd. If it's a soccer match at 4:30 in the afternoon, we get a crowd. I just look at this year. One of my favorite memories was in the fall during our semifinal boys soccer match against Burlington. And at the end, the kids who decided it was going to be a pink out game did the pink powder, and it went all over, and it was awesome. The atmosphere was awesome. And I think that's kind of what makes it special and unique in Jericho is that it doesn't matter if it's boys lacrosse, baseball, softball, the atmosphere is always fun. And that's kind of what we strive to allow happen there.
So David, you guys have a reputation of a very positive culture. And so this digs a little bit deeper, I guess, but with you being the AD, what is your philosophy if a parent comes to you because their child is not getting enough playing time? How do you balance advocating for the student, but also having the student advocate to the coach? And where do your alliances maybe lie? How does that work out?
So the big thing is, I think communication is key. And that starts from the top. So I communicate, before every season, we have a coaches meeting and we sit down with all of our coaches and we communicate what the expectations and the goals are for that season. I also think that in our policies and protocols, we have a communication plan. And one of the untouchables, quote unquote, is playing time. And mainly the reason for that is simply because we hire a coach to do their job, and their job is to create success. And success doesn't necessarily mean winning and losing. Success is, allowing the student athlete to reach the highest capability that they're allowed to or able to do for that particular day. And I think part of the playing time piece, this part of the problem is the athlete usually doesn't have an issue with the playing time piece. There are a number of times where any AD can tell you we receive emails that the first sentence is, so-and-so doesn't know I'm reaching out to you and I'd like to keep it this way. Yeah. Well, my immediate response back to them is part of our protocol is that the athlete is involved in the planning process. Sure. So I will not meet with a parent unless it's a safety concern. I will not meet with a parent unless the athlete is present. And 9 times out of 10, we try to wrap the coach into that as well. I also try to allow them to have a conversation with the coach. I may provide them guidelines, the parents a guideline or a path to what they could do in terms of playing time. And that would start with the athlete speaking with the coach and being an advocate. Coaches are human, athletes are human. People sometimes simply just make a mistake and don't realize what they're doing. They get caught up in the game. Sub-varsity, our expectations as a sub-varsity athlete is that you do get meaningful playing time every time out. That may look different for you than it does for me. But it's also the effort that you're putting into practices and so forth and the commitment you have. Once it gets to varsity, we want to have fun, but we also are out there to win. And the playing time isn't necessarily an exception. You may get it, you may not. And there are games where kids don't play at all. To go back to Coach Davis, one of my favorite stories about him is a few years ago, we had a student athlete who was basically 15th out of 15th for him on his bench. And they're in my office after lunch and we're talking and someone goes, how do you not get upset with Davis for not playing you? And his comment back to this particular person was, I know he cares about me.
Yeah.
And I have to trust that. And so because of that, I'm going to continue working hard, but he cares about me and what he's doing is for a reason. And I think that speaks volumes of if you're a good communicator, I think that eliminates a lot of your issues.
When I think teenagers, students understand being a part of a team is really valuable and means something. And if you can have the maturity that there's more than just playing time, it's what life skills you're learning. It's huge. It's big. Now, I was director of mentoring, so full disclosure. And we had a student, part of our program, that was kicked off the team because of substance abuse or broke the rules, something of that nature. How do you balance some of these students that need that community of being part of a team, but also upholding and enforcing the rules?
Yeah, I mean, you need to have expectations and you need to hold them accountable. I mean, as we say, for good, bad, or indifferent, and whether you like it or not, or you think it's fair or not, you get the opportunity to put a jersey on that says MMU or Cougars on the front, and you're going to be looked under a microscope more than just the common student in walking the halls every day. We allow for mistakes to happen. We have almost a 2-strike policy type situation. So in that instance, if a student had a substance abuse issue or an infraction like that, we would invite them in. They would be suspended for a certain period of time, not kicked off the team. They would have to do community service, and then they would rejoin the team after their suspension. Yeah. Now, if it's a continuous thing, we have had students miss multiple seasons due to continuous infractions. Something that's a little different in Jericho, at least, is that, they're student athlete 12 months out of the year. So whether you're just a soccer player, or you're an MMU soccer player, whether it's December or October or July. So if something happens, then there's another set of expectations that we have and hold them accountable for an out-of-season athlete. And we find that being able to work with these kids, as you said, they're teenagers. They're going to make mistakes. Nobody is perfect. And I think being able to provide them with a learning lesson allows them to grow and allows them to see what it's like in real life.
Yeah, I think that's real positive and well done. Again, Mount Mansfield definitely has a positive reputation for the culture that you guys have over there. I think that certainly is a credit to you, but also the coaches and team that you have around you. So that's really good to hear. 2 other questions, then I'll let you go. Thanks again for making the time. It's always fun to talk sports. What have you heard as far as the fall sports season here in Vermont?
Yeah, there's still a lot up in the air, obviously. And I feel like the answers, there are more questions than answers at this time. Yeah. My personal opinion, if I'm being honest, I mean, we're not starting on August 10th. That's for sure. Right. I think it would be wise in talking to some of the people who are on the COVID-19 committee with the VPA. I think it would be wise for them to start practices when school's back in session. Yeah. That eliminates a lot of the liability in terms of symptoms and temperature checks and all that. It takes that off the coach's onus, my trainer's onus, my own. Like it puts it on. If they're in school for the day, then they're healthy enough to be there. I do think we have to think out of the box. We're not playing a 14-game soccer schedule and then jumping into playoffs. Right. The busing is going to be an issue. The more I think about it, the more I read about it, it's going to be hard to allow a sub-varsity team with a varsity team to travel to a site with the limitations in busing. And then on top of that, the low number of bus drivers there are around the state. And I mean, we own our own bus company and we still have an issue with bus drivers. So I think there needs to be a lot of creative thinking. I always joke that, I'm going to start if bass fishing is a sport in Vermont, why not start cornhole as a sport in Vermont? And socially distance yourself there. But I do think I think we're going to see the landscape change, and I hope it's only for temporary, and I do believe it will be just temporary. But I think ultimately the biggest thing is the safety of our athletes and the community, because once one athlete receives it, then you don't know what the network is going to look like. And I think that's, there's a lot of unknowns, and I think that's what's scaring people away. I mean,
the safety definitely has to be primary in the conversation. Final question I have for you, David Marlow, the athletic director at Mount Mansfield Union High School. It's if students play without fans. Again, I always go back to basketball, but in the NBA, that's a big thing about if they do play in Orlando, pull this off, no fans, no home court advantage, no home field advantage. And as we said earlier, fans travel well to support your athletes, the athletes in the town in which they live. How disappointed will you be, or would you be, if fans were not allowed to attend?
It'd be disappointing. I'd be disappointed, but I'd be more disappointed for our community more than just myself. It would make my life a lot easier at events, but at the same time, that sense of belonging for that student who may not be an athlete but attends every game, and being part of that larger meaning or that larger group, that would be missing. We'd have to, again, start thinking outside the box. How could we allow a fan experience type thing, whether that's streaming games or, I try to update Twitter as much as possible, but would that mean I'd have to, start doing it a lot more than I already do? And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I think we can set something in stone place now, but I think in 2 weeks it's going to change again, and it's going to continuously change. And so until we know, not for sure, but until we have a pretty good idea of what the outlook is going to look like, then I think it's going to be difficult to really put any guidelines in place.
Yeah, and if I may offer, I think it's important that all of us just utilize our volunteers and just talk about the value that everybody has. So if somebody can show up and videotape, or somebody can help out, that way you aren't doing everything on your own and somebody else isn't. And when we have a community, am learning that during this time, they feel like they're on the outside, and we're like, no, we're trying to get you involved, but learning those creative ways to involve people has been difficult. But again, you're doing a great job. And I say this tongue in cheek, kind of. I'm not looking to coach now because my daughter's going into her junior year, but if you ever need a basketball coach in a couple years, keep me in mind. Keep
an eye out on job openings. You never know, especially in today's world.
Yeah, it's true. David, thanks so much. Enjoy your family, Jeff. And have a great rest of your week.
Take care.
And again, that was David Marlow, the athletic director at Mount Mansfield. You can find him here on Twitter. Good follow. And just really, if you pray, really think about these kids and the decisions that are being made for this fall and what it's going to look like, whether athletics or just simply going to school as well. There's a lot of change, and we just need to support those that are providing leadership, and just encourage those as well on what a great job they're doing. Again, my name is Jeff Fuller, Jay Fuller Interviews on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's a little greater than icon at the bottom of the YouTube screen. Thanks all. We'll talk to you again soon. And with that, we're out with this interview.